I will never stop praying for a miracle, because miracles do happen. As a pastor, I've seen thousands of miracles, physical miracles. I've seen many, many miracles, so I know they happen.
Everything changed the moment he decided it was time to walk away. But what people don't realize is that this wasn't a resignation driven by scandal or collapse. This was a carefully orchestrated transition that revealed something profound about legacy, faith, and knowing when to pass the torch. For generations, Pastor Rick Warren has stood as one of Christianity's most influential voices, shaping how millions understand faith, purpose, and community. Now, headlines are swirling with claims about his departure. But the real story, it's far more layered than the clickbait suggests. Today, we're separating narrative from fact, uncovering what genuinely happened, and exploring how one of America's defining spiritual leaders orchestrated one of the most meaningful exits in modern ministry. Stick with us, the real truth is coming. The weight of a final moment. Picture this: a man who has spent more than 4 decades speaking from the same wooden platform now stands there one last time. The congregation knows what's happening. Inside Saddleback Church in Orange County, California, the emotional charge is unmistakable from the instant Warren enters. Applause rises, people weep, and before he says a single word, he pauses head bowed, absorbing what this threshold means. "You're going to make me cry," he finally says, his voice catching slightly. The words carry the weight of 43 years compressed into a moment. But here's what makes this different from a typical farewell. Warren didn't use this platform to catalog achievements or reminisce about his greatest hits. Instead, he made a choice that stunned even longtime observers. He returned to the very sermon that started everything, the identical message he'd preached 4 decades earlier when Saddleback was barely a notion. Not a remixed version, not a polished update, the original. This decision revealed the core philosophy that had always guided him. Begin with the end in mind. It's about understanding your destination before you take the first step. Whether you're launching a family, building a business, or starting a church, the end point shapes every decision beforehand. This wasn't nostalgia, it was intentional design. That founding principle became the backbone of Saddleback and later sparked one of publishing's most transformative books. When The Purpose-Driven Life launched in 2002, few predicted it would become a cultural phenomenon. Yet across 137 languages and more than 50 million copies sold in various editions, it redefined how contemporary believers think about meaning. Purpose-driven living means knowing God's plan before taking the first step. But rewind for a moment. How did it all begin? The unlikely beginning on March 30th, 1980, exactly 1 week before Easter, a young pastor entered a rented high school theater in Laguna Hills. No established congregation waited. No prestigious building. No national reputation preceded him. Roughly 50 to 60 people showed up after receiving a basic letter announcing that something new was starting. Rick Warren didn't personally know a single one of them. What they possessed wasn't impressive by conventional metrics: no property, no institutional backing, no substantial funds, no organizational infrastructure. By every measure of institutional readiness, the whole thing looked fragile. Yet Warren possessed something else, an unshakable conviction that God had assigned them a distinct mission. That singular certainty shaped every subsequent choice. Rather than fixating on what was absent, Warren concentrated on what God envisioned. This wasn't motivational thinking, it was strategic clarity. Years later, reflecting before his congregation, he explained that recognizing divine purpose mattered infinitely more than accumulating resources. The trajectory that followed defied reasonable expectation. What began with strangers in a school auditorium evolved into one of the planet's most consequential churches. Saddleback's influence extended across 197 nations. Tens of thousands encountered Christian faith through its ministries. Buildings multiplied. Leadership structures formalized. Weekly crowds reached nearly 20,000 heads. Yet throughout this expansion, Warren maintained that the message which catalyzed everything remained paramount: purpose precedes prosperity. The man who became the movement long before Warren commanded international attention. He was simply a teenager in Northern California, born in San Jose, raised in Ukiah, the son of a Baptist clergyman and a school librarian. Both parents modeled faith as something lived, not merely discussed. Even in adolescence, Warren showed the contours of his eventual vocation. At Ukiah High School, he initiated the institution's first Christian fellowship club. Rather than keeping his convictions private, he wanted to build community around shared belief. That impulse to gather people toward purpose never abandoned him. After graduating in 1972, he pursued higher education at California Baptist University. But at 19, something shifted fundamentally. He genuinely believed that God was summoning him into full-time spiritual leadership. That conviction crystallized during an unexpected encounter that shaped his entire trajectory. In November 1973, Warren and a companion drove roughly 350 miles north to San Francisco. Their singular objective, hearing W.A. Criswell, a towering Baptist preacher, deliver a message. After the event concluded, Warren waited patiently in the exit queue, hoping for a handshake. What occurred next surprised him profoundly. Instead of a perfunctory greeting, Criswell stopped. He made direct eye contact. He placed his hands on Warren and prayed not a quick blessing, but a substantial, intentional prayer of commissioning. In that moment, Warren felt his inner calling validated by external confirmation from a respected elder. That prayer wasn't just words, it was confirmation of something I already knew in my heart. Warren pursued theological education with renewed focus. He completed a Bachelor of Arts at California Baptist, then enrolled at Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary in Fort Worth, finishing his Master of Divinity in 1979. Later, he added a Doctor of Ministry from Fuller Theological Seminary in Pasadena. But formal study was only part of his preparation. While in seminary, Warren worked at Texas Ranch for Christ, a ministry founded by evangelist Billy Hanks Jr. There he discovered another calling: writing. Alongside Hanks and Wayne Watts, he co-authored materials designed to help believers navigate Scripture more deeply. Those early writing experiences became the experimental ground for his eventual international impact. In January 1980, freshly married to Kay and newly graduated, Warren and his bride invited 7 people into their modest Orange County condominium for Bible study. 7. That's how it started. Just months later, on Easter 1980, Saddleback held its inaugural public gathering at Laguna Hills High School. Around 200 people attended. It wasn't packed. It wasn't particularly organized. But it was the start of something whose scope they couldn't yet imagine. As the years unfolded, the congregation expanded at accelerating velocity. Before acquiring a permanent campus, Saddleback met in approximately 80 different venues: schools, warehouses, rented spaces. Each relocation testified to relentless expansion. Eventually, the weekly attendance plateaued around 20,000 people, ranking Saddleback among America's largest congregations. Warren's reach transcended the sanctuary walls entirely. His teaching spread globally through books and conferences. Universities invited him to lecture. International organizations sought his perspective. He addressed the United Nations. He participated in World Economic Forum discussions in Davos. He engaged with the African Union. He spoke before the Council on Foreign Relations. He delivered presentations at Harvard Kennedy School. He contributed to Time's Global Health Summit. His profile expanded so considerably that he moved beyond ecclesiastical conversations entirely. The architect of purpose during the early growth years of Saddleback, something remarkable happened. Pastors from across denominational lines began contacting Warren. Letters arrived. Leaders visited. The fundamental question was consistent. How did this church expand so rapidly while maintaining clarity of mission? Rather than guarding his methodology as proprietary advantage, Warren welcomed these inquiries. He invested hours explaining the operating principles behind Saddleback's development. At the time, he wasn't consciously engineering a movement. He was simply sharing practical wisdom earned through trial and implementation, hoping it might strengthen other congregations. His teaching deepened through affiliation with the Institute for Evangelism and Church Growth at Fuller Theological Seminary. There, Warren trained pastors from diverse backgrounds, answered their strategic questions, and continuously refined his philosophy. Each teaching cycle clarified his message further. That accumulated learning eventually crystallized into print. In 1995, Zondervan released The Purpose-Driven Church, a book that rejected abstract theory in favor of actionable principles Warren had actually employed. The volume opened with what became known as the Saddleback story, detailing the congregation's unassuming origins. Before introducing the 5 foundational objectives Warren believed every mature church should pursue: worship, community belonging, spiritual maturation, active service, and outreach. His thesis was straightforward yet revolutionary. Churches shouldn't measure success by Sunday attendance alone. Instead, they should guide people progressively through deeper engagement, what Warren termed the crowd to the core journey. Reach people outside. Welcome new believers inside. Deepen their commitment. Develop their capacities. Commission them to extend faith beyond the building. This framework spread across denominational boundaries with surprising speed. By 2004, more than 10,000 congregations had attended Warren's training intensives. The movement had become genuinely influential across American Protestantism. Yet Warren's ambitions stretched beyond organizational growth statistics. Together with Kay, he envisioned churches as active agents addressing tangible suffering. In 2003, they launched the PEAC initiative, a humanitarian effort encouraging congregations globally to combat poverty, respond to illness, strengthen educational infrastructure, build community resilience, and communicate Christian faith through demonstrable kindness. The program emerged from Warren's enduring conviction that authentic faith moves outside sanctuary walls. He persistently challenged believers to engage the suffering they observed, trusting that collaborative church action could generate lasting transformation at scale. Recognition accompanied this expanding sphere of influence. Time magazine, in 2004, identified Warren among the year's most consequential figures. The following year, Time's 100 Most Influential People list included him alongside political titans, industrial innovators, and cultural architects shaping our shared world. U.S. News & World Report designated him among America's 25 most significant leaders. Newsweek positioned him within 15 people who make America great. The honors accumulated, but one achievement was quietly transforming his existence in ways the accolades couldn't fully capture. The Purpose-Driven Life, published in 2002, had transcended normal book success. It became a cultural artifact. Congregations studied it collectively. Families explored it around dinner tables. Small groups built curricula around its concepts. By 2006, the book had sold 30 million copies, positioning Warren as a New York Times best-selling author. The publication wasn't merely another religious bestseller. It had become one of publishing history's most phenomenal nonfiction achievements, crossing linguistic and cultural boundaries with remarkable consistency. Readers from disparate nations, traditions, and backgrounds discovered themselves in its pages. Remarkable, when you consider that these planetary-scale accomplishments emerged from conversations with a handful of pastoral leaders asking for strategic guidance. What started as one congregation sharing its experience evolved into an intellectual and spiritual movement touching millions. Rick Warren transformed from a regional California pastor into one of his generation's most recognizable spiritual figures. The voice in presidential elections. Warren's trajectory into the national consciousness accelerated dramatically during America's pivotal 2008 presidential election. At Saddleback Church, he orchestrated something unprecedented: the Civil Forum on the Presidency. For the first time appearing together as presumptive Republican and Democratic nominees, Senators John McCain and Barack Obama participated in a televised conversation focused on ethics, spirituality, and civic service. The event commanded millions of viewers nationwide. Suddenly, Warren wasn't just leading a church, he was shaping national conversations about faith and governance. Months later, President-elect Obama made an announcement that ignited fierce controversy. He selected Warren to deliver the invocation, the opening prayer at his presidential inauguration. The decision proved incendiary. Warren's publicly articulated positions on abortion and same-sex marriage mobilized opposition from activist organizations. Protests organized. Criticism intensified. Yet President Obama defended his selection, arguing that citizens holding differing viewpoints should nevertheless engage in respectful discourse. When Warren eventually offered the invocation before the global television audience, observers across the political spectrum acknowledged its message of hope and unification. In that moment, Warren's spiritual influence had reached the nation's highest ceremonial threshold. Warren's international prominence continued expanding in unexpected directions. In 2009, he partnered with Reader's Digest to launch Purpose-Driven Connection, a quarterly publication designed to encourage Christian readers through articles and multimedia content. The magazine, while ultimately discontinued due to subscriber challenges, demonstrated Warren's commitment to reaching audiences through diverse platforms. His cross-border engagement deepened further. In 2010, he was invited to pray during Rwandan President Paul Kagame's inauguration and subsequently became an advisor to the Presidential Council. Years later, in 2023, Spurgeon's College in the United Kingdom honored him as their inaugural honorary chancellor, recognition of his global ecclesiastical significance. Conflict and conviction that same year brought renewed controversy. Saddleback Church, having appointed a female teaching pastor, was subsequently removed from the Southern Baptist Convention. Warren publicly defended women's ordination, reigniting nationwide ecclesiastical debate. Even after decades leading one of American Christianity's flagship institutions, Warren remained willing to speak his convictions even when they fractured consensus. This willingness to accept institutional consequences for ethical positions had always characterized his ministry. The tension between Warren's institutional influence and his willingness to challenge establishment positions marked him as genuinely independent, not content with maintaining status quo consensus when conscience demanded otherwise. The farewell nobody saw coming by the moment Warren announced his transition from Saddleback's senior leadership. His story had transformed into something far larger than a single congregation's history. From a teenager initiating a small Christian club at his high school to a pastor whose voice echoed in presidential ceremonies and United Nations chambers, his trajectory seemed less like biography than mythology. Yet when he mounted that pulpit for his final sermon as senior pastor, the focus wasn't on buildings erected, attendance records broken, or publishing achievements earned. It wasn't about measuring influence through metrics or tallying influence through accolades. Instead, Warren fundamentally returned to foundation. He preached the sermon that started everything, the identical message, the original words. In choosing this ending, Warren illuminated something essential about meaning-making. Every substantive legacy begins with unwavering faith, transparent purpose, and readiness to trust divine direction before outcome clarity emerges. Before there was an ending, there was a beginning. That beginning still mattered. That beginning still held truth. That beginning still shaped everything. Warren's successor, Andy Wood, formerly leading Echo Church in the San Francisco Bay Area, would guide Saddleback's continued mission alongside his wife Stacy. The organizational transition was managed. The leadership succession was secure. But the deeper legacy Rick Warren was claiming transcended administrative continuity. His farewell insisted that lasting impact isn't measured by how long you hold a position. It's measured by whether the principles you establish outlast your personal tenure, whether the movement you initiate continues after you step away, whether the purpose you clarified becomes self-sustaining in other hands. The real legacy isn't what you built, it's what survives after you leave. From Saddleback's initial gathering of strangers in a high school auditorium to its emergence as a global spiritual force, the story demonstrates something remarkable about human ambition guided by transcendent purpose. It shows what becomes possible when someone chooses clarity over comfort, mission over convenience, and principle over position. This wasn't a story about a man saying goodbye. It was a story about a man demonstrating through his exit exactly what he'd been teaching through his leadership, that the most important ending is one that protects the beginning. So, what's your takeaway on Rick Warren's transition? Drop your thoughts in the comment section below. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe to Crime Brief for more explorations of faith leaders whose decisions shaped millions of lives globally. We're here every week with stories that matter, because understanding these narratives helps us comprehend the forces shaping our collective spiritual landscape. Thanks for watching Crime Brief.